What up, everybody? Welcome to the show. My name is Paul Abernathy.
Woo, woo, woo. Big dog.
Right there. Welcome. Got distracted. Got distracted again. Was looking at something else. Anyway, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. My name is Paul Abernathy. If you don't know who I am, where you been? Love having you here at the show every day, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, where we talk about the National Electrical Code, of course, all things electrically related. Topic can go pretty much anywhere. All you got to do is just shout out to us. Let us know what you want us to discuss. All you got to do is go to paulabernathy.com and you can submit on paulabernathy.com any topics that you'd like to talk about, and maybe they will make it up onto the show in a podcast or even in the email response back to you. So again, thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us here in the morning for a coffee hour. Today, I'm just doing a little bit of a Dunkin' Donut blend as always. I don't get too off track when it comes to my coffee. I don't. And I'm a K-cup guy, kind of lazy, but easy. Sometimes the wife makes it and I'm jacked. I don't know what she puts in it, but I made it this morning, not real jacked. So again, I probably should let the wife make the coffee. Anyway, so today on this episode, we're going to be looking at some of the changes that took place in Article 250 today. Just kind of look at a few of them, significant changes. Obviously not going to get into the minutia of all the changes, but I do encourage everybody to get, and whether it's for your license renewal or not, that you do an update course just so you can learn the different changes that are taking place. They may not be extremely impactful to you, but you definitely want to make sure you check them out and be sure to look over them, because again, you never know what changes are taking place. And I get a lot of comments on social media. They say, well, Paul, in this state, we do this. In this state, we do that. This state, I only do the National Electrical Code. So I don't get into amendments and modifications that each state does, or even down into each jurisdiction. It's way more than I want to keep track of. So I just do the National Electrical Code. As always, as an electrician, you should be responsible for what happens in your local jurisdiction. Obviously, what happens in your state. Not every state adopts the code, like, for example, Texas. The funny thing about Texas, for example, is when the code changes, let's say it's going to go to the 2026, probably around November of this year, then get it ready for the beginning of the year. It'll be about 6 to 8 months or more before Texas will change over, but they'll go right to it, typically with no amendments. To just go right to the 2026. Other states will come up with amendments, modifications, and things like that, and that's their prerogative to do that. But there are a lot of states. Now, interesting thing about Texas is even though the states will end up being on the 2026, local jurisdictions can be on a lesser edition. In other words, they could stay on the 2023 and have all their installations within their jurisdictional lines done under the 2023, even though the state is on the 2026. That's fine if you're just getting something approved locally. Now, if something happens and somebody gets hurt and the state steps in, they're not going to care that the city or jurisdiction did it on 2023. they're going to force it to be compliant with whatever the current code adopted for the state is. So you can't go back and say, well, I did it this way based on the 2023. If somebody got hurt because there was a change from the 2023 to the 2026, the state's going to say it's not our responsibility. You have your license as a state license, and we're on the 2026. So even though a jurisdiction let you do it on 2023, doesn't matter. We're on 2026. So that's why I always say, just be careful when you're doing an installation. And even if a jurisdiction's on a lesser code cycle, always think about doing it on the latest published edition. And if it doesn't lessen the code or remove something that would have been less restrictive than, say, an earlier code because something changed in the process, I would say always do it to the latest adopted edition. That way you know you're safe in case anything happens, that type of thing. Now, that's in states like Texas that I just talked about. It's not going to do you any good to do something in New Jersey that may be under the 2008 still. And here we are going to the 2026. Obviously, if the state's adopted, 2008, that's what you're going to do it on. You get what I'm saying? So my example was when the state is on the latest edition and other jurisdictions might be on a lesser edition, do it with the state and make sure it doesn't conflict with the lesser. If your whole state is only on 2008, well, you got to do it on the 2008, that type of thing. Let's see here. So today we're going to be talking about talk a little bit of chat about significant changes. Every now and then I like to talk about them to make sure that you're up to date on what has changed, what is progressing. So that's the topic we're going to talk about today. If you have anything you want to talk about in the comments, feel free to let us know in the comments. As always, I live vicariously through you. So let's look at some of the comments here. Get some morning shout outs. What's up, Paul? Glad to have you here. David, our CMECP down in Southwest Florida. Glad to have you here, David. Adam's in the house. Adam, glad to have you here as always. It was a very relaxing weekend. Absolutely did nothing. Here in Virginia, it was cool. And this morning, it was 55 degrees. I couldn't even sit out on the porch this morning because I was like, that's just even too cold for me. So again, when it's too hot, I want it to be cold. When it's too cold, I want it to be hot. So I can never be pleased. If it was 70 degrees where I'm at year round, I'd be happy. I'm just saying. But yeah, we had a great weekend. Did absolutely nothing except for I did build a little shelf. Excuse me a second, folks, while I turn off the audio on my phone. Always have somebody wants to chime in on the phone, but I've silenced that. But that's what I did. I built a little shelf to store the generator on, that type of thing. Just keep it out of the way, keep it up off the ground, that type of thing. We lose power maybe for 2 hours at one time a year, so it's insignificant. But I wanted to get it off the ground. What's up, Rob? Glad to have you here, my friend. Welcome. Mr. Yingling, thank you for joining us. Nice, cool morning. BWI, it's cool here too. It's 55 degrees this morning. It was chilly. What's up, Adrian? Glad to have you here. Hashtag win, getting started on the win. What's up, Michael? I see you here, Michael. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. We got my neighbor from up in Richmond area, Haas. Glad to have you here. Hopefully getting your morning started good, getting out on the site. What's up, Rob? Good morning. Glad to have you here watching over on the tube. Appreciate you. What's up, Ryan's Boat? Good morning. Hashtag win. Ryan's getting it in today. Let's see here. Jason, what's up? Glad to have you here. Can't go wrong with Dunkin' Donut. That's what I'm talking about, Michael. You can't go wrong with it. It's good stuff. What's up, Douglas? Glad to have you here, my friend. Good morning. Let's see here. Jonathan? Good. I'm glad you're good. Thanks for being here. Irvin? Glad to have you here, my friend. Good morning. What's up, Todd? We have another CMECP in the house from down in South Florida. Wow, we have a lot of Floridians that are CMECPs. That's awesome. What's up, Cray? Glad to have you in the house, Middle Tennessee. Glad to have you. David Bueno, my friend David. Glad to have you here. Welcome, as always, in the morning. Let's see here. What does Michael say we're talking about? It is New York State, upstate New York. Requires 6 hours of NEC training per year. That's awesome. 2017 in the state. Okay, we're moving towards the 2023. All right, rapidly moving. Y'all are jumping from 17 to 2023. A lot of states seem to be doing that. They may have had administrations or whatever that kind of lagged, and all of a sudden they're saying, "Look, you know what? Let's get up to the latest." So they might be jumping up to 2023. I'm all for that. Hell yeah! In Virginia, it's 4 hours of continuing education, I believe. I have to double check. I'm certified for it, but I don't remember what it is. Hold on, I look. I can tell you. What is it? Here it is. Let's see. It is only 3 hours in Virginia. Okay, 3 hours in Virginia, 4 hours in Texas of continuing education. Yours is 6. There are some states it's like 10 hours and 12 hours and whatnot. Maryland, I believe it's 10 hours, 5 in the classroom and 5 online. I'm actually doing some in September in Maryland for the IEC. I'm going to be doing I'm doing a 5-hour continuing education on the 2020 NEC because I guess that's what they're on. So I'm going to be doing that up in Maryland. I don't know where yet. Let you know where in case you're in the Maryland area. It's for IEC, so it supports IEC chapter up there. So I will be doing a code update class there. So if you're in the area near Maryland, Virginia, Maryland, and whatnot, join me. Let's see here. Mike, what's up? Good morning. Glad to have you. Alex, actually. I am having a blessed day. It's a great day. Feels good. Good to be alive. Wife is good. What's up, Poppy? #win. Good morning. Glad to have you here. Frank, good morning. Glad to have you here from up in Jersey. Glad to have you here. There's a long lost friend right there of the show. Franklin, glad to have you here. Good morning, everybody. Manny's up in the house. Good morning, Manny. Glad to have you here, my friend, as always. Charles Bailey, good morning. Familiar faces from the Fast Tracks program and online. Familiar faces. What's up? New place. Good morning. Glad to have you here. Wow, look at all these people. Petey, what's up? Good morning. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Adam says Oregon is 24 hours of continuing education. Wow. That's a lot of CEU. What the hell are you teaching 24 hours? You know, it's funny how some states will have 3, some states will have 4, some states will have none, some states will have 24. That's crazy. I wish we could get something uniformed. I mean, again, at the end of the day, I don't think that I need to teach you changes. And electricity itself doesn't change. I don't think I need to give you 24 hours of continuing education. It seems a bit extreme to me. If it's just for a licensing for masters or journeymans and things like that. If it's a combination and you got to get a bunch of different licenses, that's maybe one thing, but it seems extreme to me. It just seems extreme. That's funny. Yeah, Franklin says New York is 8 hours. It's funny how the states that lag so far behind have so many more hour requirements. That's kind of strange, isn't it? And maybe they should reevaluate how they do. What's up, Edgar? Glad to have you here. You know, in a perfect world, I would like to see everybody on the same code, and I would like to see continuing education unified throughout the country. It's just based on the National Electrical Code, so it should be the same amount of time everywhere. Code is code, okay? You know, it's just almost like they just want you to sit there for 8 hours and all. And I'm a guy that teaches code. I teach continuing ed. I just think that you don't need that much time. I don't think you need 24 hours to learn the changes significant. You're not going to remember all of them anyway. And the longer I drag it out, the more you're just going to go start falling, nodding, and go to sleep. So anyway, I should probably leave my opinions on that alone. But if I had to pick the most perfect amount of time that can absorb the significant changes, right? And really keep engaged people's attention. I think if a 5-hour NEC update is the sweet spot. Really, 3 is pushing it. Really, not a lot of time. 4 is it can be done, but not when states like Texas want to also make you do a little bit of OSHA, a little bit of other things. If we would in those states, it's just the NEC. I think 5 hours is a sweet spot. Anything more than that, it's just, it's just to me, I just waste. Michael says he wished there was a national license. Yeah, I would be all down for that. I think there should be a master's license that allows you to cross state lines, even if it's just for a limited amount of time, if it's all about the state just getting the money, right, then they can still charge the fee, right? So if I'm in Virginia and I use my master's license for whatever reason, I want to go to Ohio, okay, and I want to do electrical work, that type of thing. If I want to pull permits and do work, my master's license should qualify. Electrons don't know any different. Code is the code. All they really care about is the money. Let's be real. So once I get there, if I pay the fee, maybe it gives me the ability to have a license for a year, okay, and I can work for a year, whatever. Now, if I want to transfer it and make it permanent in Ohio, then I pay a fee and make it permanent. So then if I travel to another state, I can be there for a year, work under that license, under the reciprocity thing. And after a year, if I want to stay in that state, then I pay another fee and it transfers over to that state. That's, to me, seems simple, but that is the most logical approach that it should be. I don't know why every state pounds their chest so bad when electrons don't care. The installation's still got to be compliant with a minimum safety standard. It's a big money grab. So everybody that cries about code changes and manufacturers having influence, step back for a second and think, well, is it quite possible that the jurisdictions, the states, have a bigger problem? They're bigger money grab because of all the light. Take Texas. Texas has residential wireman, journeyman, master, apprentice, residential wireman. I mean, it's like 6 or 7 licenses. To me, it's all a money grab. You just have a master or journeyman. That's it. And a master can run a company. Now, in some states, you have journeyman or no journeyman, but they don't have a master. They have an electrical contractor. Well, it's equivalent to a master's. It's also damn confusing. I don't think that you're ever going to see a national license because, one, there's no push for it. Okay. Nobody's pushing the administration. Nobody's trying to get legislation. Nobody's trying to make it that type of thing. It's kind of like a driver's license. You can use a driver's license anywhere you go. It's a driver's license. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's pushing it. And if nobody's pushing it, and I'm certainly too damn old, I don't have an interest in pushing it. But it really would take an organization to push it. Now, you got some of these organizations that kind of do that have this reciprocity situation going in about 6, 7, 8 states, or their licensing works nationally if it's accepted by that state. But again, to me, it's just not going to take hold because every state just wants their piece. You know what I'm saying? And I am sorry that my forehead is so damn bright. I don't even know how to change that. I should wear a hat. But I'm going to blind you folks with my damn blinded forehead. Sorry about that. Anyway, Michael's retired past licensed master struggler. They are not allowed to do electrical work in their own house. Being on the country, we are trying to change this. Yeah, funny part is typically what I see is anybody that owns their own house can do their own wiring. So it's weird that if you'd have a jurisdiction where the owner is not allowed to do their own wiring, and if he happens to be a licensed master electrician, he's already ahead of the game, right? So yeah, I'd get that. That's a stupid rule, especially all over the country where, again, it's homeowners can pull permits and do their own wiring. That type of thing seems crazy to me. I agree. If states are the same case class, you should with others. Case cycle, same case cycle. I think you probably mean code cycle, that type of thing. Again, I think that it's, there's ways around it. Anyway, okay, so that's what we got today. That's what we looked at. Thank you all for chiming in. Please feel free to keep chiming in. Let me know who you are, where you're from, all those type of things. I appreciate it. Any comments you want to make? Let's go look at some of the changes that are significant. We're not going to look at minor changes. More significant, I guess, and who's the arbiter of significant? This comes out of our grounding and bonding program. So when it comes to significant changes, These are the more significant changes that especially took place, for example, in Chapter 5 in Article 250 and 100 to kind of give you a dabble of 100. But that's what it is here. What's David say here? Here in New York City, there's a license for the 4 boroughs, another 2 parts for 2 parts of Long Island. Okay, licensing is just, again, it's New York. It's like Chicago. It's a lot of those. It's just money grabs, right? Unionized money grabs. It's all over the country, so it's not just one state. But everybody makes good money on this, charging the electricians no different than people like me charge to teach you the code. It is what it is, right? Okay. Yeah. Well, the problem with the IBEW is they don't even push that you should even get a master's license in most cases. They push that you get a journeyman and you go work for a company that's under a union or IBEW. Then they kind of stifle somebody getting a master's anywhere, right? Because one could go out on their own and they would scab off. So again, the problem with these big associations is that they typically keep everybody like NECA, all of those. The companies that are the main company don't really want their people to achieve the highest level of licensure. They like to keep them down. So that's why a lot of them in certain states will get their journeyman if they finish a 5-year apprenticeship program. Then they've already done their testing as they went through. They give them the journeyman, but they don't really give them any incentive to go on and achieve the master level. You know what I'm saying? And so it kind of keeps them under that thumb. So, and again, if the IBEW pushed that around the country, I guess unionized people could flow a little easier, that type of thing. But yeah, they're not pushing it either. So anyway, okay, let's look at some things here today. All right, so changes to the 2023, folks, just the significant ones we'll kind of look at and discuss. And we'll go to the code book if we need to. We have it there. Oh, by the way, I should mention this for those in case I forget. I will be here at NECA. Okay, it is September 12th through the 15th. It's in McCormick Place. If you're in the area, okay, NECA. What is neat about NECA? There's a lot of events going on. You can see all the exhibitors on their website. Basically, it's NECAconvention.org, by the way. And basically, you can see the schedule of any educational events, what's going on the show. You can register, those type of thing. I don't know what it costs to register, to be honest with you. But if you're in the area, it's definitely something good to go to be able to go around and see all the vendors. But really, one of the things about the NECA show is that it's neat to see the new products, see what's coming out, what manufacturers are offering. You might even be able to make a deal with one of the manufacturers there. Certainly not going to be able to make it with wire and cable guys, because wire and cable is not something you can just, we don't want to load it back on the cart type of thing. But tool manufacturers, you can get deals, things like that. So, yeah, San Diego was great. So, yep. But definitely, if you're in the Chicago area, now I'm not a big fan of spoiler alert. I don't want to make anybody mad. I am not a huge fan of Chicago area. I'm just not. It's nothing against Chicago. I'm just not. But I'm there to support Prismium and Encore Wire and answer any technical questions that may come up. I don't teach at these events anymore. I don't even submit anything to teach because I really don't want to teach that much anymore out on the road. So I just leave that to the young folks, people that really are into that thing. I am not. I am so winding down my career, that type of thing. So anyway, if you're in the area and you're at in Chicago from September 12th to the 15th and you're at the show, I'll be at the Encore Wire Prismium booth. Love to see you. Stop by, shake hands, that type of thing. All right. Okay, so let's look at some significant. Okay. Yeah, Michael, so true. We still have a country without electrical inspections. Yeah. So in Texas, for example, it was out in the counties. If you weren't in a city and you were out in a county, then majority of the time they had 0 inspections. In fact, I did a bunch of third party third party inspections just for the homeowner, just for the customers peace of mind. And you would be surprised what people try to slip in that wouldn't be allowed in a jurisdiction, right? Wouldn't be allowed in the city because they have inspections. So they don't use the equipment, So I had many cases where I was called out there, and some of the low-hanging fruit was trying to reuse electrical equipment with all the knockouts gone and not punching the holes and putting the plugs in them, or just kind of some shady stuff that wouldn't get allowed where the inspections, but then they just keep it and they reuse it out in the county. It's amazing. And I use Texas example because I was there for 11 years and did a lot of work around the state. And I tell you, you'd be surprised what gets done out it is truly the wild, wild west out in unincorporated areas out in the country, that type of thing. So you'd be surprised what they get away with or try to get away with. Okay. I always said that there is a big business out in Texas if somebody wanted to open up an inspection and really worked on trying to make sure homeowners and everybody knew that people didn't have to have electrical inspections out in the county. It's a big area, a lot of Tarrant County out in those areas that there was a lot of business, but you have to work to get it. People don't know that you're available, that type of thing. So, but yeah, they get away with pretty much anything out there. What's in Scotland County, Missouri, where I built a hunting camp? We didn't have any building permits or inspections. Yeah, it's still amazing places. We have some cities that are so strict, but then you can go 10 miles out into the county or in the country and there is nothing, and they don't care what you put in the house. It's kind of weird how that works. Interesting in Texas, even in those areas where there was no inspections, the state still had a statewide electrical requirement, right? So even if you installed it in the county, you're supposed to install it to whatever the state is. So this is how I got quite a few electricians in trouble when I was in Texas, because when I was called to do inspections out at properties for customers, they would say to me, well, there's no inspections out here, Mr. Abernathy. I don't have to do it to code. And I'd say, oh, I beg to differ. You have to do it. It's an honor system out here. You're supposed to follow whatever the state is on, even though there is no inspections. You can be held liable for your installation. And I said, you're going to do it right, or you're going to have a problem. He says, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'll call up the state and I'll tell the state. I'll be that Karen. I'll be that guy. I'll be that guy for my client. Call up and say, hey, this guy's doing installations. He's not following the state's adopted National Electrical Code minimum safety requirements. He's doing it out in the country. Yes, there's no permits are required, but he's still putting homeowners in an unsafe position because he's not following the state adopted minimum standard. You don't want that, do you? Because I know the administrators, I know the people, okay, that are become to do that inspection for the state. You'll lose your license, and then one little mishap here in the county is going to affect all the business you do in the city. Is that what you want? And they would say, no, Mr. Abernathy, no, we'll fix it. We'll make it right. I'm like, damn right you will. Okay. So, I mean, again, it's knowing the rules and knowing the requirements and things like that. But yeah, you're supposed to be, as an electrician, that we do stuff based on the National Electrical Code, even when nobody's looking. Okay. We try to follow the minimum safety standard. Not always recommendations from manufacturers, because they're just recommendations, right? Some people will say do this, some people say, but what is the minimum safety standard? What is written? What is adopted? What is put out there for me to follow? Okay. So it was funny as talking about, it's in the McCormick Center in downtown Chicago, in the McCormick Center. So I was doing this pad that was for the generator, whatnot, and I posted a picture and somebody said, oh, Paul, it's got to be 5 feet away because that's what the manufacturers say. Well, yeah, they can say all they want, but it's not a piece of electrical equipment, right? That's what your haters call me, Karen. No, they call you Karen is the ones that tattletale on people, right? It's always got to be that nosy neighbor, called Karen. Everybody's poking their nose in your own business, right? You have something on the side of your house that's in view and nobody's complaining, but there's always that one neighbor. There's always that one HOA guy or gal that's that nosy Karen, right? Or you hear something go off in the neighborhood, just something go boom or whatever it is, whatever it may be. It doesn't affect me, but you go on Nextdoor or whatever, Facebook, whatever, and immediately the whole neighborhood's going, what's going on? What's that? Or a car's off. Everybody's so nosy in everybody else's business. You know what I'm saying? That's a Karen. Okay. I'm like, leave my ass alone. That's why I moved to the country. Leave my ass alone. Don't worry about what I do. Anyway, the guy was like, oh, the generator has to be 5 feet away from the dwelling. It's not written. It's a portable generator. It's got wheels on it, bro. There's nothing in the NEC. There's nothing in 37 NFPA. There's nothing in any other standard that says, well, it's just good practice. Look, I follow safety protocols, right? If the manufacturer says something and it's not a requirement, it's a mandate. Well, it's part of their listing. It's a generator. It's not a piece of electrical equipment. It's a recommendation for how you would operate that equipment. Okay, it's like we recommend that you not take a pressure washer and aim it at your face. Okay, I mean we can't stop you from doing it if you're that stupid, but it's legal ease that manufacturers have to tell you. Okay, and that type of thing doesn't mean it's a requirement. Doesn't mean And then one guy said it was a little deck. It was like 40 inches by 30 inches. And they were like, did you get it inspected? Ain't no damn jurisdiction going to inspect a little old platform that is bolted to the side of a concrete wall. I mean, it amazes me the kind of stuff that people will comment on social media. It just amazes me. Anyway, let's get back to the lesson. All right. Don't judge me for flossing with my power washer. That's right. And you do you. I just can't stand when other people want to chime in about it. It's none of their damn business. You want to floss with your power washer? You do you. Boo. All right. So let's look at some changes. So Article 100, obviously all of you know that in the 2023 edition of the National Electrical Code, and many of you are just now adopting it or soon will be adopting the 2023. We're not even talking 2026 until after the code standard makes everything final. Then you'll start seeing me talk about those changes that are coming. We'll have some special videos on specific changes. So you'll see that over on Fast Tracks Tube. But we're talking 2023. So all definitions from our articles throughout the NEC have been relocated to Article 100. Y'all all know that. So now you're not looking at the .2s inside of all of the specific articles, and most all of them. All those definitions now are in 100. Makes life a little easier, I guess, but it does make 100 a little bigger. That type of thing. Next, 250.24A5 has been relocated to 250.24B. What is this? This happens to be that load side connection, whereas in a remote distribution panel, you can't do case to neutral connections on the load side, right? Because it creates objectionable currents. Well, that used to be in 250.24A5. That just got moved out of the A's and got made to B. So that's, not significant. It's just the load side connection requirement got moved from A5 to B. So you hear us comment on COAST videos that people do. They talk about that's a case to neutral violation, 250.24A5. It's now 250.24B, that type of thing. And that's just not a significant change. It's just movement. And the only reason we bring it up is because, again, you see people that quote stuff all the time. You'll see it be B now, and before somebody comments back, oh, bro, you're wrong. It's A. No, it's now B. Same thing. Didn't change the intent of it. It's just moved, okay? 250.24D2, grounding of service supplied AC system was rewritten for technical accuracy and easier use, okay? So conductors connected in parallel in two or more raceways, there's an A and a B, shall be based on the largest ungrounded conductor in each raceway, okay? Or B, shall be based on the sum of the circular mill area of the largest ungrounded conductors from each connected in parallel in each raceway, okay? So basically just clarifying, and to see what that looks like, I guess, in the NEC, I can show you 250.24. Just to kind of, we haven't done this yet, so we'll just show you how it's going to look in your code. And I'll jump down, make it easier right here. All right. So when you get down here, you're talking about AC systems, and you see you have all these different icons and everything. So we're talking about D. So down here in D, all right? So this is grounded conductors brought to a service, okay? Y'all all know this, right? So on all systems, the grounded conductor, that if it's a grounded system, has to be brought to the service. Now, what happens beyond that is what many people don't understand. So I can have a motor that has absolutely no neutral load. So it's not going to have a grounded conductor. It still has to have an equipment ground because you got a fault condition you have to clear, right? But you have a black, red, blue, or a brown, orange, yellow going to that motor or whatnot that doesn't have a neutral, then there's no reason to have a neutral there. So I get that question a lot from people. They say, do you always have to have a neutral? Well, not once you get past the service, not unless there's a need for the neutral. Then you got to have it. So this is a rule that's talking about bringing the grounded conductor to the service on a grounded AC system. Okay, that's what this is talking about. All right, and then of course you see right here, only thing difference right here is how it's addressed. See all this gray in here? So it points it out. It says it's dealing with how did you deal when conductors are connected in parallel in two or more raceways? It says if the ungrounded conductors are connected in parallel in two or more raceways or cable, the grounded conductors shall also be installed in each raceway or cable and shall be connected in parallel. So what is good for the ungrounded conductor has to be good for the grounded conductor. Okay, so if you have two sets of 500 kc mils, whatever, then you're going to have two sets of neutral conductors as well, okay, or grounded conductors in this case, which is there. So yeah, it says the size of each grounded conductor, which may or may not be a neutral depending on your system, in each raceway cable shall not be smaller than 1/0. Okay, obviously that's because we are paralleling them, right? Because again, this is for two or more raceways, so this 1/0 still holds true even for the neutral. Or the grounded conductor. And it says, and shall be sized in accordance with 250.24 D2A or D2B in accordance with 250.24 D1. Okay, so there's D1 here. It gives you the path of how to do that if that is size of the largest ungrounded conductor in each raceway, right? Or size based on the sum, okay, sum of circular mill area of the largest ungrounded conductor in each set, connected in parallel in each raceway. Okay. Of course, it gives you a reminder down here of your paralleling rules in case you forget those. But of course, with the grounded conductor, it's still the same 1/0 and larger application. Okay. So anyway, that just kind of gives you a understanding and break it down so it's a little easier. So that was the change just to break it down. And you know what? I don't know if it shows. You click view change. And this is what it was from the previous edition. It's harder to see it because it cuts it off, right? It was basically the same thing. And if you look at the change, right? I don't want to go there. This is what it said and I don't want to adjust the screen, guys. So I'm just going to read it to you. It says, if underground certain conductors are installed in parallel in two or more raceways cable, the grounded conductor shall also be installed in parallel. The size of the grounded conductor in each raceway or cable shall be based on the total circular mill area of the ungrounded conductors in each raceway, but not smaller than 1/0. So essentially trying to say the same thing, but broken into clarity. So by changing it and breaking that sentence up and adding the language and then adding A and B, it says the same thing in a sense that it said before. It's just a prime example of just bringing a little clarity to how the code reads. That's really all, okay? The next one, significant changes to 250.30C and 250.36, impedance grounded system. A lot of changes that took place during our meetings. And there was a guy, Eric Stromberg, who is very heavy into these impedance grounded systems, very vital to the code panel when it came to explaining these impedance grounded systems, because it's something that I did not work with very much in my career. And so impedance grounded system has been revised by deleting the words high and neutral with the new definition of impedance grounded systems. So any reference to these high impedance grounded systems that were talking about neutral or even high, all of that was clarified up, simplified down, and the verbiage is now going to call them impedance grounded systems. Okay. Now, one of the big differences is when you go from XO to the grounding system, in like a transformer, for example, typically there was an impedance device that was placed in there. Okay, so it was important that we clarify that it wasn't exactly the same as a direct connection from XO to the ground. It was something that was placed in there. Okay. So it was an impedance grounded system, and it's used a lot on systems that were considered maybe ungrounded, or systems that were labeled as a high impedance grounded systems. Anyway, this change just tries to introduce the language a little bit better into what's called an impedance grounded system. Okay. Next one is 250.50, 250.52, and 250.53, dealing with grounding electrodes. The phrase reinforced steel or rod has been replaced with the word rebar. Okay, so I'm guessing that we didn't know what reinforced steel or rod was, and there was confusion that they were trying to say that it's what we're talking about is a rebar, right? So anyway, rebar has been added in there to be more accurate for the construction term that's used. They don't call them reinforcing steel or rod. It's actually referred to in the trade as rebar. So that was the significant change, and that was changed everywhere in .50, .52, and .53 of Article 250 in order to correspond with the language change. So went through there, and everywhere that it was reinforced steel or rod was changed to rebar. Next, 250.64G, enclosures with ventilated openings. Okay, so a new section was added stating that grounding electroconductors must not be installed through ventilated openings of an enclosure. All right, let's go look at this. 250.64G was introduced, so we'll go look at it right here. We'll go down to G. All right, so it's important that we're talking about grounding electroconductor installations. And you're running that grounding electroconductor, then we got G was added. So you see this little new symbol right here. For those that are in Link, you can click on all these things and it will show you stuff like right there, summary change, okay? And it also will give you the FR, which is the first revision. If you're the kind of person that likes to go look this stuff up, then that's the first revision, and you can actually use that and go in and look up and see the work that the code panel did on that. Okay, that's what the FR means. But basically it says enclosures with ventilation openings, grounding electroconductors shall not be installed through ventilation openings of an enclosure. And again, the example, this right here is the ventilation openings in the bottom, and this is, I believe, a transformer. Okay, so you have other ways that you would route it out. There's ventilation openings for air circulation in the bottom of equipment, things like that. So again, you don't want to have the GEC running through those vents. Now, some people say, Paul, what's that one little spot? Really? Is that really going to matter? I get that all the time from people. They go, well, the code is just so, does it really matter? You got that one. Well, that is just the minimum of the extreme, just one. But if you don't draw the line in the sand somewhere, then people can take things to the extreme. And what if you don't have that many vents? What if there is just some little small slats, and you take the grounding electroconductor, and what if it's of a significant size? It could block airflow. So the code is the code, whether we like it or not. I don't always agree with everything in it. I know that's going to be odd for some people to say, what? Paul doesn't always agree with everything in the NEC? What? Yes, I don't always agree with everything that's in there, but it is what's in there, and I follow what's in there. So if they say do that, and I do what they say, do it. Okay. So in this case, as extreme as it may seem, running, which looks like it would be, it looks like a number 4 maybe running through there. It's hard to tell with the picture. Out of the bottom of this equipment, this is a ventilation entry. This is running out the bottom. Believe it or not, this right here, see this last line, is an example of the installation of a grounding electroconductor through the equipment ventilation perforations as depicted in this picture below is not permitted. Even if you say, look, that's not going to hurt anything. Okay. Maybe you got to drill your own hole. Okay. Maybe there's another way you got to think about routing it. Fact of the matter is, it is what it is. And I have people that will get extremely upset when an inspector comes along and fails somebody for this, and they go, really, bro? One little wire goes out of one little hole, okay? You get what I'm saying? One little hole, and the reality is, it is what it is. It's far better to just know the code and not do that. Then now you're going to have to come back, disconnect it, reinstall it, and again, it costs money. So to do it right the first time, we don't get paid to do things multiple times. We get paid to do it right the first time, right? Same. Michael says, I wonder if the NEC will ever require a grounded conductor to be bought to loads just in case the equipment changes and requires a grounded conductor. Residential wants a grounded conductor available at switches, even if they don't use it. Yeah, there's some allowances for that. So it wants a grounded neutral conductor. In this case, for residential, it would be a neutral conductor. Yeah, I mean, they do that because of things like occupancy sensors and all this type of stuff. But there are some allowances, like if you have a room, you have 2 switch locations and they're all within sight, you have those. There's some unique allowances where you don't have to have it. If you can get it in later, or if the system's designed that you maybe have an unfinished basement, you can add it later, or a raceway with enough volume to be able to allow you to add it to the raceway later, then you don't have to do it. So there's some allowances in there. But if the equipment, and that may be different because to a motor that doesn't have a neutral, right? It's just a 3-phase motor, for example, that with no neutral loads, or a single phase 2-leg motor that doesn't have a neutral contribution. What is the point of bringing neutral? Well, it's what's going to change because somebody may take that out and put something there later that does have a neutral. I don't think the code is not designed for the future. It's designed to comply with now. I use a great example of a panel board that's mounted with breakers in it, and the breakers are none of them are higher than 6'7", but you have spaces available that they could go higher than 6'7". So to the center of the handle tie. So do you as an inspector reject it because somebody could put breakers in higher than 6'7", or if you're there as an inspector and there's no breakers in there higher than 6'7", do you just pass it because the code says that you shall not have any breakers higher? Not the potential to put breakers higher than 6'7", but that you don't have any breakers higher than 6'7". So that's the old saying where we have to be electrical inspectors, not electrical expectors, that type of thing. So yes, do I think somebody might come in and put something higher and violate the code at some point? Yes, but how do I reject them? How do I turn them down off of speculation? You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to circuits, you install the circuits for what you have. It's the next person's responsibility. If now they're replacing it and putting in something that's going to require a neutral, then the electrician's going to get paid good money to run a new circuit. I think that's how it be. I don't want us to try to future-proof everything. So if I'm running a circuit to a load, and there is no neutral required for that load, I'm not running a neutral. I'm not thinking about what if they someday want to change that piece of equipment and the new equipment will require a neutral. I'm not thinking that way. And I don't want the code, God's sakes, I don't want the code to start thinking that way. A lot of that equipment, the space, take the motor, right? Motors, and they have a limited space anyway. So if you start bringing in another conductor to a motor, where am I going to put it? Do I have enough room in there in the peckerhead? Do I have enough room in there to actually add the cap off a neutral that I'm not using? Does that create other potential issues just because somebody may come down in the future and say, I don't need a motor anymore, I'm going to put something else right here? Yeah, it was one of those fine lines that I probably would say, nah, we should probably just let's install it for what's here today, and we'll let the skilled electrician that we need, like Mike Rose says. He heard somebody say that I think it's from the data center CEO, that says his company alone will need over 500,000 electricians in the next couple of years. Amazing to think about that, because AI is not going to take the place of you skilled craftsmen. Absolutely not. All right. Anyway, no. So there you go. Don't run it through any ventilation holes. Most noticeably for me, transformers, ventilation holes, just because there's an opening there and you're too lazy to go get your drill to drill your own hole or something, don't run it through the ventilation hole. Okay. Next, 250.70, methods of grounding and bonding conductors connected to electrodes. This section has been subdivided into two subsections, with A covering general requirements and B for indoor communication systems. And list of items have been deleted. Okay, so if we go look at the NEC, and let's just go down, we'll go right here, 250.7. We're already right there. Okay, so you see where it was changed in your code. You see now where there's an N. So now there's a general, right? And then down here is B. This is indoor communication systems. Okay. So again, this is methods of grounding and bonding conductor connections to electrodes. Okay. All right. Now this is just giving you how do you make those connections, by the way, to the electrode. Again, in general, and y'all know this, your grounding and bonding connection shall be connected to the grounding electrode. Again, this is the rule for making that connection, that actual connection to the electrode. It says shall be made by exothermic welding, listed lug, listed pressure connectors, listed clamps, like for example, like a ground rod clamp, that type of thing, or other listed means. Okay, so other manufacturers can make other types of connectors as long as they get them evaluated for their specific use. That's fine. It says connections depending, or here you go, look. Connections depending on solder shall not be used. Okay. So for grounding and bonding connections, in this case, because the electrodes, obviously you're not going to use solder alone. That's a no-brainer. Okay. And if you think that exothermic welding is soldering or like soldering, then you need to go back to first year apprenticeship school and reread that and understand that. Okay, I'm just saying. It's vastly different than soldering. I'm just saying. It says ground clamps shall be listed for the material of the materials of the grounding electrode and the grounding electroconductor, and if used on pipe, rod, or other buried electrodes, shall also be listed for direct soil burial or concrete encasement. Okay, not more than one conductor shall be connected to the grounding electrode by a single clamp or fitting, unless the clamp or fitting is listed for multiple conductors. Okay, so that's the rule where we go to, and we determine things like, okay, I've got a acorn clamp, and it's only going to get one conductor. If I've seen pictures with multiples stuck under it, it's listed for one conductor. That's it. Okay. If you're going to go on to a second one, just don't break it. Just loop it through and go to the next electrode if you want. But if you stop it, you have to put a separate connector in order to put another conductor to go to the supplemental electrode if that was what you're doing. But yeah, don't try to put more than one unless the fitting is designed for more than one. That should be a no-brainer, but again, it's missed a lot. And again, you can get there's a lot of stuff when we learn the code. See, we get used to installing things, and we get very proficient with it, and we get really good, and we do really pretty work. We do really neat stuff. But there's all these little subtle codes in there that kind of govern what we do, like the fittings. Okay, you're going to use it on rod, pipe, or plates. You're going to use it on the pipe. It has to be listed for that application. Okay, and so at the end of the day, it's got to be for the right use, right? If I had $1 in the past for pictures that I've seen where they have taken, hold on for a second, folks, I'm going to lose TikTok here, where I've actually seen CSST piping where they took the clamp, which is designed to bond the CSST piping, and they literally connected to the CSST. Corrugated stainless steel tubing. That is not what that clamp's for. And is it going to damage it? Absolutely it is. But I've seen it. I've actually been in houses, have seen it. Okay. So they don't understand what they're doing. Usually it's black pipe connects over to the fitting that connects over to the CSST. They make the clamps that can go on the actual fitting nut, or you would clamp it onto the black pipe before it changes over to the CSST. But I'm just saying, whatever electrode you're using, there's a fitting that's designed for it, whether it's a pressure connector, a clamp, a lug application, whatever it is, they're available. Okay. So you don't have to be MacGyver and come up with something. Manufacturers are very creative when it comes to different stuff, and they're all listed. So check them out. All right, let's go back here. All right, so that was that. So that's been broken down now, very clear. So you've got indoor communication system applications with straps and all this kind of stuff. And then you got the general rule like we're used to, where it's going to talk about the fittings, the clamps, the listed pressure connectors, all that kind of stuff that we're usually familiar with for use with the grounding electrode system. Next is 250.118, the types of equipment grounding conductors. This section was subdivided into A, containing 14 different permitted wiring methods that are acceptable as equipment grounding conductors. New subsection B covers those that are not permitted as equipment grounding conductors that were previously in 250.122 as follows. Okay, 121. Okay, so you had a list of things that were prohibited, and you might think, whoa, if you're not paying attention, you're like, whoa, all of a sudden, I've got something's disappeared in 121. Well, no, that's all been moved into subsection B now of 250.118. So you're saying, oh shit, they're gone. No, those prohibited applications have just been moved. Okay, so they're up in subsection B now of 250.118, which makes more sense, right? So you have A, which is a different type of equipment grounds, and then you have B now, which is telling you what's not permitted. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see. We're previously intended as followed. Okay, grounding electroconductors, exception, the wire type equipment grounding conductor installed in compliance with 250.6a and the applicable requirements for both the equipment grounding conductor and the grounding electroconductor in Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4 of this article shall be permitted to serve as both the equipment grounding conductor and as a grounding electroconductor in 2, structural metal frame of a building or structure. Okay. So to look and see what the whole scheme of it, how this all looks, we'll go over and look at 250.118 and just kind of let you see how this is different than it was before. So here's 250.118. Obviously, 121 has disappeared in your code. So here you see it's A now. Okay, different types of electrodes. Basically, your copper wire type right there. Okay, stranded, covered, or bare, insulated, doesn't matter. There's your rigid, IMT, EMT, and obviously liquid tight flexible metal conduit does meet the requirements. Okay, for all you out there that say it doesn't, yeah, listed FMC does, but you have these caveats. Okay, you have minimum circuit sizing, you have minimum trade sizing, you have overall length limitations, and all that kind of thing there. But if you meet all these, then flexible metal conduit can use the armor as an equipment ground, as long as you meet all these caveats here. If you meet all these and you're good to go, you don't have to run a separate type equipment ground in there. Same down here. This is liquid tight flexible metal conduit. Same thing. You have some caveats here on when that actual wiring method can be used as an equipment ground. Okay. But you have to meet all these caveats. It's going to limit it on sizing. Okay. And then, of course, down here, flexible metal tubing, which is different than flexible metal conduit, okay, has its limitations. Of course, there's AC cable, yada, yada. There's MC cable, okay, and yada, yada, yada. It goes on down the list. Now, here's where you see B is not permitted was added. It says the following shall not be used as an equipment grounding conductor, okay? Now, you'll notice what's missing, all right? All right? Missing from 121, and I don't know if it'll show me the previous yet. So here's 121, and it had everything listed there, but you'll notice that that's missing, and now it's just covered here under 250.118. Okay, and basically it's telling you not permitted. The following should not be used as an equipment grounding conductor. So the equipment grounding, you cannot use the grounding electrode conductor as an equipment grounding conductor. However, we do have an exception that says, you know what? A wire type equipment grounding conductor installed in compliance with 250.6a, so we don't have no objectionable current application, and the applicable requirements of both the equipment grounding conductor, that would be sizing requirements, and the grounding electrode conductors in part 2, 3, and 4, that would be sizing as well and routing. Of this article shall be permitted to serve as both an equipment grounding conductor and grounding electrode conductor. So that is significant for many people. So there may be an application where, depending on where a panel is located, that you could use, okay, the grounding electrode conductor as an equipment grounding conductor, provided you meet the sizing requirements for both, that type of thing. Now, this is done very typically up when you're doing PV systems, where you probably have a PV system where they have requirements, and that the equipment grounding conductor also could serve as the grounding electrode conductor if it's properly sized. If it meets the size requirements of both, then you have some allowances to do that under that exception, only of the wire type that do that, okay? And of course, more notably significant is you cannot use the metal frame of a building as an equipment grounding conductor. Now, it may be used to extend the connection to an electrode, okay, for a grounding electrode conductor, but it is not using the frame of the building to do what? To be used as an equipment grounding conductor for clearing overcurrent protected devices. Lightning transient surges, things like that are totally different than what you would have that you'd be doing with a equipment grounding conductor. Okay, and it specifically prohibits the metal frame of a building or structure to be used. No exception to that one. Cannot use the frame of the building. It may be convenient. In other words, if your panel is on the other side of the building and somebody screwed up and didn't run an equipment ground for whatever reason, or there's a break in the system, somebody changes, maybe it was the raceway or something was the equipment ground, and maybe somewhere they put PVC in there, whoever, and now you've broken that connection, and some smart aleck goes, well, it's all metal frame building. It all goes back to the panel. It's all connected together. Let's just use the metal frame of a building as an equipment ground. Absolutely not. And the code prohibits it. It's not permitted to use it as such. Again, that's totally different than using the frame of the building, for example, as extension of the grounding electrode conductor, right? Or extending electrodes. Totally different application. Equipment grounding conductor functions vastly different than the grounding electrode conductor because the grounding electrode conductor has nothing to do with clearing an overcurrent protected device. That's an equipment grounding conductor, so it's a safety circuit. Okay. Again, we talk about all this stuff in our grounding and bonding course, and we get pretty deep into it. If you're interested in our grounding and bonding course, it's available on our website. It doesn't expire. It's great to have in your pocket, and it's been updated for the 2023, and it's got a lot of great illustrations in it, by the way. Okay. All right, let's get down here. Okay, 250.130. Snap switches have been added to 250.130C for replacement of snap switches to be consistent with the requirements in 404.9B. So it's just terminology using the phrase or the term snap switches where appropriate, that type of thing. So if we go look at 130 and just see the use of the term, you should see it in grayed out or tanned text right here. There you go. So, or snap switches without equipment grounding terminals with snap switches with equipment grounding, or, okay. So, or snap switches without an equipment grounding terminal with snap switches with an equipment grounding terminal. So that snap switches has been added to be consistent with what's in 404 as well, more notably 404.9B. Okay, so that's all that's been added in there for that consistency. Okay. Let's see, frames of ranges and clothes dryers. This section has been totally rewritten to make the requirements more understandable and easier to use. I thought it was probably pretty straightforward the way it was before, but I guess us as a code panel, and I can't remember this activity, so I'll apologize. I don't remember all the work we did in this. So all we did, it looks like this was just broken up here to make it a little easier to understand. Looks like that's what it was over previous. Okay. So basically it says the circuit supplying appliance shall include an equipment grounding conductor. Again, that's that fourth wire we're always required to have now, not like it was back before, I think 2005 or something like that. Okay. It says the frame of the appliance shall be connected to an equipment grounding conductor. That's that fourth conductor. That's why we're running it. Okay. In a manner specific with 250.34 or 250.38. Okay. So that's your general rule. And then it says grounding conductor connections. All right. This talks about for existing branch circuit installations only. Okay. So we have rules here. If you're in, it's actually 96, not 2005. 96 when the grounding conductor was required for the range. Okay. Back in 96, you could use the grounded conductor and you only ran 3 to the range, but we changed, okay, prior to 96. So 96 was the first when we required the 4 conductor application. Okay, good. Let's see. So anyway, there's a lot of extra commentary here. Make sure you check it out. But this gives you some provisions when dealing with existing situations, okay? All the caveats you have to follow, right? And y'all all familiar with that. And this used to be just one simple. I don't know if it'll show you what it used to be. I'll show you what it used to be. So here's what it used to look like. Sorry, I'm not going to move it to the right. I don't know that I can. Nah, it won't adjust for me. So it just makes it harder to adjust. And now I've screwed up my page. So bear with me here. All right, so right here. So frames or electric ranges, one mount, whatever, okay, shall be connected to an equipment ground, right? And then you had the exceptions here that was for the existing. You know, when you go somewhere on a service call and it's an existing application where it's existing branch circuit that's being run, this was the rules that you would follow. And you're permitted to connect to the grounded conductor because you don't have an equipment ground. Obviously, this was prior to 96, but you got to meet these caveats to do so. Otherwise, electricians are going to say, you know what, Mrs. Homeowner, we're going to have to run a new circuit. So maybe you'd be able to meet those existing caveats, that type of thing. Let's see here. Another significant change, 250.148. This was where it's the continuity of equipment grounding conductors and attachment in boxes. This section was revised to ensure, okay, it wasn't that it didn't before, but it was revised to make sure that everybody knows that the equipment grounding conductors that are spliced or terminated within a box must be connected together without regarding to the circuit. What does that mean? So that would mean that if I have 12s and 14s coming into a box and I have the equipment grounds, there's a lot of people that thought that we separated those out. You don't separate those out. You bring them all together, okay? And again, does that mean that if I had a 8 gauge in there and a 14 gauge in there in the box, same box, for example, then you're going to bring the equipment grounds together. Whether you understand or why you're doing this, because it's creating a grid effect throughout the entire system by bringing them all together. And it was a misconception that people had about the wanting to separate and push them back in the box. No, they all need to come together. That was clarified in 251.48, although that was really always the way you were supposed to do it. But the language made people think that you had to isolate your circuits and isolate your equipment grounds, keep them with that circuit, keep this one with that circuit. That is not the way it works. Okay. Let's see. All right, so we're getting a little out of 250 here. Some of the changes that were in also taking place. 517.13, it says the equipment grounding conductor for receptacles and fixed electrical equipment in patient care spaces. It says this section has been rewritten as it applies to the equipment grounding requirements and with exceptions relocated within the section. So let's go look real quick at 517.13 just to see. Now, this is one of my favorite ones to quote when it comes to wiring cable, only because of the redundancy requirements in 517.13 A and B. But let's go look here and see what it looks like. Okay, so let me take you guys there. All right, so here you see there's an exception right here. And if we go look and see what the previous view was, let's just look at it, okay? Summary of the change, relocated exception number 2 from 517.13b. Okay, so just relocated the exception, all right? So let's see right here, exception. So equipment grounding conductors for receptacles and fixed electrical equipment in a patient care space. Of course, y'all know the patient care space is where you're going to be treating the patient. And there's also a definition of what's called a patient care vicinity, which is immediately around where the patient is, okay? So it says wiring that is servicing, okay, doesn't matter if it's routed somewhere else coming through the building, but it ultimately is going to be serving the patient care space. Doesn't matter where it's routed. If it's going to be serving that patient care space, it shall comply with the requirements of 517.13 A and B. And A is the wiring method. That would be an example like AC cable. The armor can be used as an equipment ground. And then you'd have to have an insulated equipment ground inside of it. That's how you get healthcare AC. MC, the same way. MC, you can use the armor if it is like a smart ground type product like ours, which all the convolutions are connected together. And then you would put an insulated equipment ground inside of it. So that would qualify. But also EMT, rigid, intermediate, all those things would qualify, okay, as the wiring method as an equipment ground and an effective ground fault current path. But then you also have to have the insulated equipment ground inside of it, okay, the raceway or the cable system, okay? So the big change here was this exception got moved up because it's applicable here. It says exception. So here you have to meet A and B, okay? This is the wiring method has to qualify, and then it has to have an insulated equipment ground inside, so you have to have that redundancy, right? But it says exception. Luminaires that are in that space that are more than 7.5 feet above the floor and switches that happen to be outside of the patient care vicinity, okay? Remember, patient care vicinity is a different measurement, okay? That is around the treatment area, not the overall space. Y'all understand? So you can have a room that's a patient care space, the room, but then you have the area around where they're, like, let's say the bed, then it measures out. That is called the vicinity. And these are defined terms. So you have the patient care vicinity right around where the treatment would be. And then you have the that bed is in the overall room. That would be a patient care space. Okay. So you have rules for staying away from the vicinity, which is immediately around the treatment area. And then, of course, then you have the overall patient care space to which that patient care vicinity is located in. Does that make sense? So we have these rules. So in this case, if I have luminaires that are above 7.5 feet, okay, more than 7.5 feet above the floor, and if I have any switches for those luminaires, let's say, that are outside the patient care vicinity, so they may not be within this 5-foot perimeter, but they may be across the room on the door that you come into the patient's room or entering into patient care space, then it's saying, okay, what is the code saying? Well, the code's saying if that's the case, then it shall be permitted to connect to an equipment ground return path complying with the requirements of 517.13a or b. So it says that switch is fine to be in that space, just not in the vicinity, as long as it connects to an equipment ground. It can be actually connect to the, say if it was a raceway, connect to the metal box, or that's connected to the raceway, or it could be connected to the insulated equipment ground conductor that's run with the circuit. Either way, either or would be fine, okay? But it can be in that vicinity. It can be in that area, okay? And so again, with the luminaire, it's the significance of that is that those luminaires that are more than 7.5 feet above the floor, okay, and switches located outside the patient care vicinity are permitted to be connected to an equipment ground provided path, just like they normally would. So it could go right to the equipment ground, either one, the wire or the actual wiring method, either one. Doesn't really matter for that scenario, okay? All right, let's see here. Let me get back to the lesson. And that's what it's there. It's basically just move the exception up so it applies. It's applicable to both A and B, okay? So that's the real significance of the move. So you have those allowances. 547, part 3, distribution, agricultural building. This part has been totally rewritten based on the bonding and grounding requirements for equipotential planes, as well as the distribution points and electrical supply buildings. So the grounding scheme, the equipotential plane, agriculturally, all of this is just kind of rewritten, easeability and how to follow. Again, great example is if you have a very vast gradients from where, let's say, cows come in, for example, then what happens is if you don't do it right, or you don't grade it right, and it's a slab, let's say, then what happens is the cows will not produce milk if they feel that it is a poor voltage gradient. And if there's anything that's on metal parts in there, things like that, it will affect the ability for the agriculture, and it creates a potential safety hazard. But again, 547 is very much dealing with agricultural buildings, so it's kind of rewritten to make it a little easier to understand that type of scenario. And the same thing for Article 555. Okay, marinas, boatyards, notice floating buildings is also under 555 now. Okay, all of that. And it's dealing with commercial and non-commercial docking facilities, non-commercial being residential. Okay, so this article has been revised. So 555, take a moment to relook at 555. It's rewritten to more adequately deal with electrical datum planes and equipotential planes in the new 555.14 to help minimize or eliminate step and touch potentials for electrical installations in boatyards and docks. Again, if you have a panel that's supplying circuits to a actual boat dock, now we have specific requirements for an equipotential plane, basically circling the panel service location, so it reduces step potential. A lot of this stuff came out of the concepts of 682, 680, work on multiple panels in order to create this for marinas to also try to reduce the touch potential at things like service equipment and stuff like that. So significant changes in 555. I encourage you to read them to get a better understanding of those changes. Now, we had some questions. Let's see if I can answer these questions. Michael says, can the inter-system bonding connection be connected to the concrete encased electrode before it terminates in the main load center? So it depends. If the inter-system bonding connection, there's two different types. One is for communication only, right? So there's specific requirements on how you can make that connection, but you can't use one that's designed specifically for communication for anything other than communication, okay? And it gives you the parameters on how you'd make that connection, okay? So now they make other types, like I can go with the bus bar option, and then I could bring all of my electrodes to it, okay? But we're very specific when it comes to the inter-system application. So let's see. We go to the NEC, and let me go back here. Let's see here. Get back and try to get. Let's see here. Oh, that's lightning. Sorry. I'm going back to the freaking start of the whole daggone thing. Oops. There we go. What is going on with my mouse? What the frick? I don't know if y'all can see my mouse is stuttering. Hold on. Let me reload this thing because my mouse won't won't start it on that. Hold on. I want to say. Let's see here. Let me reprogram it. Okay. Reprogramming it. Okay. There we go. All right. So y'all see the mouse now? It shouldn't be bouncing. Solid. Okay. Whew. All right. So let's go back here. I'm sorry, I was jumping around. Okay. Let's go back here for the bonding of communication, what you're talking about. So here's your inter-system bonding requirement. Okay. Stop bouncing. Stop bouncing around. All right. So this is the device. So this is the IBT. And of course, you have an other option down here. This is the other means, which could connect to all different types of electrodes as long as you follow the rules. And this is a 1/4 inch thick by 2 inch wide. And of course, the length is dependent on how many connections you have to make. That can be used for all things to come connecting to. This one here, the inter-system bonding right here, where do we make this connection? It says the inter-system bonding is for connecting inter-system bonding connections shall be provided external to enclosures at the service equipment or metering equipment enclosure. They make the kind that snaps onto the meter externally as well. And at the disconnected means of a building or structure that is supplied by feeder. So that is the outside disconnect, let's say, to a feeder to a remote distribution panel in another building. It says if the IBT is used, okay, so if this one is used, communication only, it shall comply with the following. Be accessible, okay, shall consist of a set of terminals with the capacity to connect not less than 3 conductors. So it's going to have at least 3 conductors, okay. Not interfere with the opening of the enclosure for the service building or structure disconnecting means or metering equipment, and be secured and mounted as following. Okay, so here's all the mounting requirements. Okay, and be listed as grounding and bonding equipment. Okay. And of course, you have some exceptions for buildings that obviously do not have, okay, that do not have any type of communication systems or whatever that's going there. Then you have some exceptions for that. Okay. As far as making the connection to this, I believe that you can actually make this connection for this intersystem bonding. I believe that you can make it anywhere that you want to the grounding electrode system. So I'm not sure that answers your question. So you see, can the intersystem bonding be connected to the concrete encased electrode before the termination of the main load center? I don't think it matters on the, as long as you're making a connection to the electrode. Okay. And I don't think it makes a difference when it comes to that. I don't believe there's any differences. You know, again, I've seen them connected, for example, to the grounding electrode conductor that's going to ground rods between the panel and the rod. I've seen the kind that clip on it. So if you're not going to a rod, then you basically could connect to the electrode, that type of thing scenario. I don't see anything that would prohibit that connection. Let's see. Where else? What else? What other question do you have, Michael? I'm sorry. It said, with GFCI requirements in the 2023, miswiring of the ground conductors, etc. Yeah, so most of this, probably GFCI devices today are smart and they can tell when they're mismatched and just won't function or won't work. But again, it's probably more prone for people to not install them properly and reading instructions. I guess people aren't reading instructions like they used to. I see all these videos all the time where people take the instruction and go, I don't need that. And I probably do the same thing. I mean, I probably installed, a gazillion ceiling fans, but I still have to go to the instructions every time I get a new one because the damn things are being built different ways to attach the blades, different things all the time. So I'm always looking at them. So, but yeah, I guess with the, now, since after 96, and with the new GFCIs, it's hard for the wire them up and mess them up, that thing. But again, you probably still can. I don't look into it that deeply. Let's see here. What else do we got? In 2023 still, we can't use the rebar as a bonding jumper to connect two electrodes. No, you can't use the rebar for that application. No. Still can't use to connect electrodes. Now you can use the building frame. You connect the rebar to a building's frame, like an I-frame, and you can use the building frame, but no, we're not letting you use the rebar to be able to interconnect like that. No, in the 2023, we are not. All right, I think that's, we went about an hour and 30 minutes. Let's do some giveaways real quickly, and then I'll let you folks get on your way. So let's do some drawings. Pretty sure you already had Fast Tracks 2, so we'll spin again. Hold on here. My screen is messing up. Let's see here. I don't know. I don't know what that is. Anyway, so I don't know. My screen was messing up and I had to put in a code. I do a lot of what's called, I have a lot of my systems in my computers, if y'all didn't know this, is logic based. So I still write code, not as much as I used to, not code like electrical code, but other coding, HTML and a lot of Perl script and a lot of that stuff I still dabble with and I use it to control certain things. So I have a screen open that actually, if it connects with my splitters in my boxes and all, and sometimes the code gets wonky and I have to mess with it a little bit. Anyway, sorry about that. All right, so battles, let's see, Jonathan, you're in the drawing, Jonathan. Let me get you down here for Trade Hog. All right, let's spin again. I got you in the drawing for Trade Hog. Guys, if you have recommendations for future episodes, please do me a favor. Just go to paulabernathy.com. It'll only take you a minute and send me a recommendation. All right, we got to spin the name thing again. It didn't lock on anybody. So this is for Minimalist Watt drawing. But I take requests. Anything you want me to explain, you want me to explain a pull box, you want me to explain a WireWay application, whatever it is. If you have an image you want to send me that you want me to break down on a show, I'm more than happy to take the image and I'll put it on the screen and we will break it down piece by piece. So all of you out there, if you're on the internet and you see an interesting video or an image and maybe obvious, but you're thinking, Paul, can you break down all the issues you see? Send me an image. I'm more than happy to attach it. If you want to send me an image, just send it to me at info@electricalcodeacademy.com. Info, I-N-F-O, at electricalcodeacademy.com. And you can send me the info. I will put it on screen and we'll break it down if you want. Seems pretty neat to do that. I used to do that all the time in like commentary. Okay, let's spin another one. Got you down, new place. You're in the drawing. Again, we want to make these shows. I got to do these shows Monday through Friday. I want to make them engaging for you. If you want them to be interesting, please submit topics for me to discuss. I don't know if you already have Fast Tracks 2. If you do, then we can extend it from today or whatever. Whenever we extend it, it'll go another year. Or you can say spin again if you want. We'll spin again. But that's up to you. Let me know and I'll spin again. And you let me know if you want me to just spin again or you want that extension. Let me know, Todd, if you're still here. More than happy to spin again. There's other stuff on the wheel. You are in the drawing for the coaster. These are available on our website, by the way, folks. If you're interested in one of these coasters to help support us, there you go. I use mine for my coffee all the time. Got another one over here. Right there. There's an Ohms wheel one. These are available on the website. Anyway, appreciate the support. Okay, so I've got you down for that. Let's do one more drawing, and then we're waiting for Todd to let me know what he wants, and I'll get your Red Dog. I'll get your question here. Let me go on and spin this. Yeah, at this point, I'm going to know how to pronounce that. You're going to let me know. You still haven't. And I think you like that I don't know. Okay, I think you like that I don't know. All right, let's see here. Red Dog, one more question before we leave. Here's what Red Dog says. Hey, Paul, why can you use a 6 AWG GEC on a 200 amp service with rods and don't need to use the table? That's because if you go to the NEC, right here in the NEC, if you look at 250.66, Red Dog, let's go here real quick. Oops, right here, 66. Okay, so you see where it says right here in 250.66, it says the size of the grounding electric conductor and bonding jumpers, and that would be from electrode to electrode, by the way, for connection for the grounding electrode shall not be smaller, okay, than given in table 250.66. So this is your table, shall not be smaller than what's given down here, right? So then except, see where it says except as permitted in 250.66 A through C. Okay, well, A is the one for the rods, right? So it says, now, if the grounding electrode conductor or bonding jumper connected to a single or multiple rods, remember, if we can't meet 25 ohms or less, okay, then we do it, right? And so we got multiple rods. It says that, or any combination thereof, it says, as described in 250.52A5, which is your rods, pipe, or plates, okay? Then it says, does not extend onto other types of electrodes that require a larger size conductor. So that's what we used to mean when we used to say, oh, so it's just a saying, sciatal, and I'm calling it sciatal. Got you. Psi, was it? What's the difference? What is the psi in the ATL? Yeah, I'm intrigued. What is that? Are you a sci-fi lover and you live in Atlanta, or is it just a name? Okay, I'm always wondering what these mean. Master the NEC is mine, and it's because I strive to master the NEC. You get what I'm saying? I'm intrigued. Okay, I always love why people pick their usernames. So anyway, Red Dog. So if I'm going from my panel to ground rod, and I'm going to another ground rod because it doesn't meet 25 ohms or less, so I have to supplement it. And obviously, if I chose a ground rod, I'm gonna probably put another one in, right? And I put another one in, as long as I'm not leaving those electrodes to connect over to any other type of electrode on the system that would be larger or would require a larger electrode, a grounding electroconductor than what I'm running to that ground rod, which is a 6, then that would be a no-no. Then I couldn't use the 6 to those rods if I'm going to loop through the rods and then continue on, let's say, to another type of electrode. Then I couldn't use the 6. But if it stops at the electrodes and it stops at those rods, then that's the same as we used to say when we would say that it would go to the sole electrode, means it didn't go on off to any other electrode. Well, if that's the case, basically it goes from your panel and stops at those rods, then it doesn't need to be larger than a 6. Can it be smaller than a 6? Absolutely. If it was a 100 amp service and you're using 310.12a, for example, then it would be an 8 gauge. Could I run an 8 gauge to a ground rod? Absolutely, I could. Remember, this says it doesn't have to be larger than a 6. The only caveat that I have, if it was a 100 amp panel and we were running an 8 gauge, is that now I have to protect it against physical damage. So I got to put it in a raceway. If you put it in a ferrous raceway, like an EMT, which iron's in it, then you got problems. You're going to have to bond that GEC at both ends, kind of pain in the butt. So you probably use Schedule 80 PVC so you don't have to do any bonding, okay? Or even if it's a 100 amp service and you could run an 8, you're probably going to bump it up to a 6, because a 6, if it's not subject to physical damage, then you don't have to do anything. I can run that 6 along the surface and it's fine, okay? Now, if it was subject to physical damage, even if it's a 6, you'd still have to protect it, okay? But those are the different nuances. I think we covered that in a couple other shows that we did. But the reason that you don't use a table is because as long as it's going to that electrode and stopping and not looping through other electrodes, then it doesn't have to be larger than a 6 for a rod, pipe, or plate. Okay, it's the same thing with a UFER. Doesn't have to be larger than a 4 if you're going to a concrete encased electrode. Can it be? Sure, it can be. Is it required to be? Absolutely not. And then, of course, ground rings. Ground rings typical as a 2 gauge. I run a 2 gauge in my ground ring. I run a 2 gauge out. I run a 2 gauge around. I'm good to go. Okay. I don't have to use a table. On any other electrode other than rod, pipe, or plates, rings, or concrete encased electrodes, on any other type of electrodes that you encounter, you're going to go right to table 250.66, period. So you only get the reprieve in A, B, and C if you're running from the system to those type of electrodes and you're not going from that electrode to another electrode that would require a larger grounding electroconductor from the point where it leaves those electrodes. Does that make sense? It stops there. So I'm just going from panel to ground rods. That's it. Not going on anywhere else. Then it doesn't have to be larger than a 6. That's the concept. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, folks. That's our giveaways for today. I appreciate you. If you get a chance, go check out fasttrackstube.com. That is our annual subscription platform. We added a bunch of new videos over there, cleaned up some videos from Coffee Hour, put them in the Coffee Hour category so it's easier for you to find them. If you missed any previous shows, we're slowly adding more. There's literally hundreds that we have to move. So you're going to see a big growth in the tube. We love it. We think it's the best. We think it's better than YouTube. There's a lot more features here. You're probably not going to use them all. They're weird features. There's so many that when the developer was working with us with it, added all kinds of stuff. Yes, you can even upload your own videos. Yes, you can contribute just like YouTube over here. Okay, many people don't, but you can. So anyway, you want to develop your own channel and upload some videos? You can. We have to review them, but you definitely can. So there's a lot of features over here. Okay, so anyway. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you tomorrow, another Coffee Hour, which we will do a lesson tomorrow. So again, it'll be out of the Fast Tracks program, but we will do a lesson tomorrow. But if you have any questions, you think about them now and you want to send them to me, do me a favor, just go to paulabernathy.com and submit them through the portal. We'd love to answer them for you live on the air. Till next time, folks, stay safe. Oh, wait a minute. There was one more question. I got ready to leave. When people use a 2-inch from the panel to an 8-inch gutter, is this a violation since it's not 8 times the diameter of the pipe? Well, it is if you're running it and it's being used as a pull box, right? If you're using it and all the rules in 314.28 come into play, then you most certainly it has to meet it. But if it's just going to the box and it's stopping at the box, then it's not being used as a pull box. It's just being used as a junction box, right? So if there's a lot out of the question there. If it's, you're leaving a little out. If you're running it to a box and it's just sitting there and it's just the box, then yes, not being used as a pull box. If it's running to a box and then it's got other raceways coming out of it, then again, it's being used as a pull box. And if the conductors are 4-gauge insulated and larger, then it's got to meet the requirements of 314.28. And it's either going to be straight as 8 or angles or splices are going to be 6 times the largest raceway coming in. So again, all depends on the use and application. So it's not simply just, is it a violation? You didn't say what is being used. It just simply says going from the panel to an 8-inch box, where there's other parameters that are going to come into play, right? Makes sense? All right. Anyway, we have a course for that. We have pull box videos over on Fast Tracks Tube that explains a lot of that type of stuff. But again, a violation it all depends on the intended use. But in that question, it just says it went from a panel to a wireway with a 2-inch trade size. If it's not being used as a pull box, then no. Get what I'm saying? Then it wouldn't be. Now, it could be a 2-inch that's going to an 8x8, which has small conductors like 14s, 12s. Your concerns is, okay, what about conductor ampacity for bundling inside of that 2 that's leading in there? And if it's smaller raceways coming out where you've got smaller conductors that are smaller than 4-gauge, like 8, 6, things like that, now it becomes an issue with that box. What is the volume of that box? And then you end up kicking in the requirements of 314.16, and then it becomes a volume thing, and it's not being actually used as a pull box. So again, it depends on the conductor size and the intent of the box. Make sense? Okay. All right, folks. Take care. God bless. That was kind of abrupt. Take care. God bless. We'll see you on the next episode. I need some more coffee. Peace out. See you tomorrow.